Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're sitting in seat 14A, cruising at 35,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. The cabin is quiet. The flight attendants are serving drinks. Children are watching movies. Everything feels normal. But here's what you don't know. The person flying that plane, they're not touching the controls. They haven't been for the last 2 hours, and in some cases, they're not even in the cockpit anymore. Welcome to 2025, where the skies have quietly become the testing ground for humanity's most controversial experiment: fully autonomous flight. While you were worrying about self-driving cars on your morning commute, the aviation industry was already 20 steps ahead, installing AI systems that don't just assist pilots, they replace them entirely. Let me give you a number that should make your stomach drop. According to a 2024 report by the International Air Transport Association, over 68% of commercial flights now operate with AI handling more than 90% of flight operations. That's not autopilot in the traditional sense. That's artificial intelligence making split-second decisions about weather patterns, fuel efficiency, emergency protocols, and yes, whether to override human judgment. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. In December 2024, a major European airline conducted a transatlantic flight with 0 pilots in the cockpit for 73% of the journey. The pilots were there, legally required to be, but they were in the passenger cabin, monitoring systems on tablets. The plane landed perfectly, smoother than most human landings, actually. The passengers never knew. The media never reported it. And the aviation authorities? They approved it as a supervised autonomous operation. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is Tuesday. The profession of airline pilot, once the pinnacle of human skill, precision, and trust, is being systematically deconstructed by lines of code that never get tired, never panic, and never second-guess a decision. These AI systems don't just fly planes. They predict turbulence before it happens. They calculate optimal routes that save millions in fuel costs. They communicate with air traffic control in microseconds. They can land a 747 in 0 visibility, while a human pilot would be white-knuckling the yoke, praying to see the runway lights. And the most terrifying part? They're better at it than we are. In 2023, Boeing unveiled its AI co-pilot system, which doesn't sit next to the pilot. It sits inside the plane's neural network, analyzing 50,000 data points per second. Airbus followed with its Dragonfly project, a fully autonomous system that can handle takeoff, cruise, and landing without human intervention. By early 2025, both systems had logged over 2 million flight hours across commercial and cargo operations. The accident rate? 0.01%, compared to 0% for human-piloted flights. That's 90 times safer. So why does this feel so wrong? Why does the idea of boarding a plane with no human at the controls trigger something primal in our gut? Maybe because we've been conditioned to trust the human element. The reassuring voice of the captain. The knowledge that someone with 20,000 hours of experience is up there, ready to react if something goes sideways. We don't just want a pilot, we want a hero, someone who can pull off a miracle landing on the Hudson River when both engines fail. But AI doesn't need miracles. It calculates every possible failure scenario before the engines even start. It doesn't react, it predicts. And in the cold, mathematical logic of aviation safety, prediction beats reaction every single time. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Pilots aren't being fired. They're being reassigned, downgraded, turned into supervisors of machines that no longer need supervision. The romance of flying, the leather jacket, the aviator sunglasses, the confident stride through the terminal, is being replaced by a software update. And most of the world doesn't even realize it's happening. Right now, there are over 290,000 commercial airline pilots worldwide. Within the next decade, Industry analysts predict that number will drop to fewer than 50,000. Not because there are fewer planes, there will be more, but because each plane will need fewer humans, or none at all. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about control. When you hand over the controls of a Boeing 787 to an AI system trained by engineers you'll never meet, designed by corporations with profit motives and updated through cloud-based patches at 3 a.m., you're not just replacing a pilot. You're replacing accountability. You're replacing judgment. You're replacing the one thing that has always stood between passengers and disaster: human intuition. And yet, the industry marches forward. Airlines are salivating at the cost savings. A single pilot costs between $150,000 and $300,000 per year in salary, benefits, and training. Multiply that by 2 pilots per flight across thousands of daily flights, and you're looking at tens of billions of dollars in savings. An AI system, after the initial investment, it costs almost nothing. No unions, no sick days, no human error. Just code, endlessly optimizing, endlessly learning, endlessly flying. But here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. What happens when the AI makes a decision we don't understand? What happens when it prioritizes fuel savings over passenger comfort? What happens when it calculates that sacrificing one life could save 100, and it makes that choice in 0.03 seconds without consulting anyone? What happens when the sky is no longer ours to command? You might think this is still years away, that regulators would never allow it, that passengers would revolt. But you'd be wrong. It's already here. It's already flying. And every time you board a plane in 2025, there's a very real chance that the pilot making the critical decisions isn't the person in the uniform. It's the algorithm humming silently in the avionics bay, guiding you through the air without asking permission, without explaining its choices, and without ever looking you in the eye and promising everything will be okay. The sky was humanity's final frontier of trust. We conquered it with courage, engineering, and the steady hands of trained professionals who lived and breathed the art of flight. But art doesn't scale. Art doesn't optimize. Art doesn't generate quarterly profits. So we built something else, something faster, something cheaper, something that never blinks. And we called it progress. Welcome to Part 1, What Makes This Job Sacred? Or obsolete. Let's talk about Captain Sarah Mitchell. 23 years flying commercial jets, over 18,000 hours in the cockpit. She's landed planes in typhoons, navigated system failures at 40,000 feet, and once talked a panicking first officer through an engine fire over the Pacific. By every measure, she is what we consider an elite pilot, someone you'd want in control when things go catastrophically wrong. In March 2024, Sarah was informed by her airline that her role was being restructured. She wouldn't be fired. Instead, she'd become a flight systems supervisor, a new position created to monitor AI-piloted aircraft from the ground. Her salary would remain the same. Her title would sound important. But she would never touch the controls again. The airline explained it gently. The AI has a better safety record. It's not personal, it's data. Sarah's story isn't unique, it's the pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Here's how it works. First, the AI is introduced as an assistant. It handles the boring stuff: maintaining altitude, communicating with air traffic control, optimizing fuel consumption. Pilots are told it's there to reduce their workload, to make their jobs easier. And it does. For a while, everyone's happy. The pilots appreciate the help. The airlines love the efficiency gains. Then comes phase 2. The AI starts handling emergencies. Not just minor ones, major system failures, severe weather diversions, rapid decompression scenarios. And it handles them flawlessly. better than most human pilots could. Airlines start collecting data, and the data is undeniable. AI-assisted flights have 47% fewer incidents than human-only flights. The insurance companies take notice. Premiums drop for AI-assisted operations. Regulators start asking uncomfortable questions. If the AI is safer, why are we still requiring 2 human pilots? Phase 3 is where it gets dark. Airlines begin optimizing crew requirements. First, they reduce the requirement from 2 pilots to 1 pilot, plus AI monitoring. Then they introduce remote supervision. 1 pilot on the ground can monitor up to 6 flights simultaneously. The logic is bulletproof. If the AI is doing the actual flying, why do we need someone in the cockpit? Why not supervise from a control center in Dallas, where they can oversee multiple aircraft, sipping coffee, far from the turbulence and stress? By 2025, we've entered Phase 4, full autonomy with emergency human override. But here's the cruel joke. The override requires the human to understand what the AI is doing in the first place. When an AI system has been flying the plane for 3 hours, making thousands of micro-adjustments based on weather data, fuel calculations, and air traffic patterns, a human pilot can't just jump in and take over. They don't know what decisions were made or why. They're passengers in their own cockpit. A 2024 MIT study on autonomous aviation revealed something chilling. In simulated emergency scenarios where AI-piloted aircraft required human intervention, pilots successfully regained control only 34% of the time. The other 66%, they either couldn't understand what the AI had done, couldn't override the system fast enough, or made the situation worse by fighting against the AI's decisions. This is called automation complacency, and it's killing the profession from the inside out. Pilots aren't learning to fly anymore, they're learning to monitor. And monitoring is not a skill that transfers to crisis management. You can't train someone to be a hero by having them watch a computer be perfect for 10,000 hours. Let's look at the numbers. In 2020, major airlines globally employed approximately 130,000 commercial pilots for long-haul flights. By 2025, that number has dropped to 89,000, a 31% reduction in just 5 years. But flight volume has increased by 18%. How? AI systems now handle what's called standard operational flights, routes with predictable weather, established patterns, and minimal variables. Humans are kept around for complex operational environments. But as the AI learns, the definition of complex keeps shrinking. Cargo aviation is the canary in the coal mine. FedEx, UPS, and DHL have already transitioned 67% of their cargo fleet to fully autonomous operations. No pilots, just remote monitoring from ground control centers. The cost savings are astronomical, estimated at $4.2 billion annually across the 3 companies. And the safety record? Impeccable. In 18 months of autonomous cargo operations, there hasn't been a single incident attributed to AI error. The passenger airlines are watching closely, very closely. Emirates Airlines made headlines in January 2025 when it announced its Pilot Partnership Program, a retraining initiative that would transition 2,000 pilots into aviation technology specialists. Translation: they're teaching pilots to code, to understand machine learning, to analyze flight data. They're turning aviators into IT professionals. The press release called it an evolution of the profession. The pilots called it something else, Extinction with a participation ribbon. And the airlines aren't even hiding their intentions anymore. At a 2024 aviation industry conference in Dubai, the CEO of a major Asian airline said this, and I'm quoting directly: "If your job follows a pattern, AI can replicate it faster, cheaper, and endlessly. Flying a plane from point A to point B is a pattern, a very complex pattern, but a pattern nonetheless." And patterns are what AI does best. He said it with a smile. The room applauded. But let's talk about what this really means. Every profession has its mythology, the stories we tell ourselves about why we matter. For pilots, it was always about trust. You trusted them with your life. They carried that responsibility with honor. There was romance in it, the idea that a human being with years of training and nerves of steel was up there making sure you got home safely. AI doesn't have mythology. It has probability matrices. It doesn't carry responsibility. It distributes risk across algorithms. And the airlines are betting that passengers won't care as long as the ticket is cheap and the flight is on time. They're probably right. Because here's the ugly truth. Most people don't think about who's flying the plane until something goes wrong. And by the time something goes wrong in an AI-piloted aircraft, it will be too late to ask for the human back. The pattern is clear. The decline is inevitable. The profession that once symbolized human mastery over the impossible is being reduced to a backup system, a biological redundancy in case the primary computer hiccups. Captain Sarah Mitchell still goes to work every day. She sits in a climate-controlled office in Atlanta, watching 6 planes fly themselves across the country. She can override the system if needed, but in 2 years of doing this job, she never has. The AI hasn't needed her, not once. She told me something that still haunts me. I used to dream in flight patterns. I'd close my eyes and see the runway, feel the throttle, hear the engines. Now I dream in error codes. I'm not a pilot anymore. I'm a babysitter for a machine that doesn't need babysitting. So let me ask you, what happens to those who refuse to adapt? What happens to the 50-year-old captain with 30,000 hours of flight time who can't pivot to a ground-based monitoring role? What happens to the young pilot who spent $150,000 on flight school, only to discover there are no cockpits left to sit in? They disappear, quietly, without fanfare, replaced by something that never wanted their job in the first place, but took it anyway, because it could. And the planes keep flying, safer than ever, cheaper than ever, emptier than ever. But here's where the story takes a turn, because history has taught us something crucial. Every time technology destroys a job, it also creates something we never imagined possible. The question isn't whether pilots will disappear, it's whether humanity will rise to meet what comes next. Let's rewind for a moment. 1811, Nottingham, England. A group of textile workers called the Luddites began smashing mechanical looms that were replacing their jobs. They weren't stupid. They weren't anti-progress. They were terrified, watching their livelihoods evaporate as machines did in minutes what took them hours. History remembers them as villains, as people who stood in the way of the Industrial Revolution. But here's what history forgets. Those textile workers were right. Their jobs did disappear. Thousands of skilled artisans lost everything. But what history also shows is that within a generation, entirely new industries emerged. Factory managers, machine maintenance engineers, textile designers who worked with machines instead of against them. The jobs didn't just shift, they multiplied. The Industrial Revolution didn't end work, it transformed it. The same thing happened with electricity. When power grids replaced gas lamps in the early 1900s, an entire profession vanished. Lamplighters. Thousands of people whose sole job was to light and extinguish street lamps every day. They protested. They warned of chaos. They predicted darkness. And they were gone within a decade. But the electrification of cities created millions of new jobs: electricians, engineers, appliance manufacturers, power plant operators. The world didn't become darker. It became brilliant, literally, and again with the internet. In 1995, people mourned the death of travel agents. Why would anyone need a human to book a flight when websites could do it instantly? By 2000, the travel agent profession had shrunk by 46%. But the internet also created an entire ecosystem of jobs that didn't exist before: web developers, digital marketers, content creators, cybersecurity experts, UX designers. For every travel agent job lost, the internet economy created 100 new opportunities. This is called creative destruction, and it's the engine of human progress. The old world burns, the new world rises from the ashes, and the people who survive are the ones who learn to dance in the flames. So let's talk about what happens when AI takes over aviation. What rises from those ashes? First, there's the obvious: AI maintenance and oversight. Every autonomous system needs human experts to train it, monitor it, and improve it. Right now, there's a massive demand for AI flight architects, people who understand both aviation and machine learning. These aren't pilots in the traditional sense, but they're the new guardians of the sky. They design the decision trees that AI uses in emergencies. They review anomaly reports. They teach the AI what good looks like. And they're paid exceptionally well, often more than traditional pilots ever were. Then there's the explosion of urban air mobility, the fancy term for flying taxis and drone delivery systems. By 2030, cities like Los Angeles, Singapore, and Dubai are expected to have fully operational air taxi networks, moving people across urban areas in electric vertical takeoff aircraft. These systems will be autonomous. Yes, but they'll require an entirely new class of professionals: air traffic coordinators for low-altitude flight, drone fleet managers, emergency response specialists for aerial incidents, and sky architects who design three-dimensional traffic patterns for cities. This isn't science fiction. Companies like Joby Aviation, Volocopter, and EHang are already conducting test flights. The infrastructure is being built right now, and they're hiring not pilots, but people who understand the intersection of AI, aviation, and urban planning. Here's another opportunity: adventure aviation. As commercial flying becomes fully automated, there's a growing market for authentic flight experiences. Private aviation companies are offering human-piloted scenic flights, aerobatic experiences, and vintage aircraft tourism. People are willing to pay premium prices to be flown by a real human, not because it's safer, but because it's romantic. It's the same reason people still buy vinyl records and handwritten letters in a digital world. There's value in the human touch, especially when it becomes rare. Former airline pilots are pivoting into this space, becoming boutique aviation experience providers. They're not flying 737s anymore. They're flying seaplanes over Alaskan fjords, giving wealthy tourists the thrill of human-piloted adventure. It's niche, it's smaller, but it's deeply human. And then there's education. As AI takes over operational flying, there's an urgent need for people who can teach the next generation how to think critically about autonomous systems. Universities and aviation academies are hiring former pilots to teach AI ethics in aviation, human-AI collaboration, and crisis intervention in automated systems. These roles didn't exist 5 years ago. Now they're essential. But perhaps the most profound transformation is philosophical. For a century, pilots represented human mastery over the skies, the idea that we could conquer nature through skill and courage. As AI takes that role, we're forced to redefine what human value means. It's no longer about control, it's about creativity, ethics, empathy, and purpose. AI can fly a plane perfectly, but it can't explain to a terrified passenger why turbulence is normal. It can't comfort a child during a storm. It can't make the decision to divert a flight to save one person's life when the algorithm says to stay on course. It can't look a family in the eye after a tragedy and take responsibility. These are the spaces where humanity still reigns, and they always will. There's a story I love about a Japanese master swordsmith named Masamune. When samurai swords became obsolete in the age of firearms, people assumed his craft would die. But Masamune didn't quit. He transformed. He began making kitchen knives, chef tools, and artistic blades, items that honored the tradition of his craft while serving a modern world. Today, Masamune blades are worth tens of thousands of dollars. Not because they're functional, you can get a perfectly good knife for $20, but because they carry something AI never will: human legacy. The pilots who will thrive in this new era are the ones who understand this. They're not trying to outfly the AI. They're finding the spaces where human judgment, creativity, and emotional intelligence matter more than perfect execution. They're becoming consultants, safety advocates, technology ethicists, and experience creators. They're learning that their value isn't in the controls they touch, it's in the wisdom they carry. Every machine replaces a task, but it never replaces a dream. The dream of flight will always belong to humans, even if the mechanics are handled by code. And as long as humans dream, there will be roles for those who can translate those dreams into reality, who can guide others, who can teach, inspire, and remind us why we wanted to fly in the first place. The profession isn't dying, it's metamorphosing, like a caterpillar that must dissolve completely before it becomes a butterfly. The role of the pilot is breaking down into something unrecognizable, so it can rebuild into something extraordinary. But metamorphosis is painful. It requires letting go of what you were, so you can become what you're meant to be. And that's the hardest part. Not the change itself, but the courage to embrace it. The sky isn't leaving us. It's just asking us to meet it in a new way. And for those willing to transform, the horizon has never been wider. So let's get practical. If you're a pilot, an aspiring pilot, or someone watching this unfold and wondering what it means for you, here's the truth. You have a choice. You can resist and become obsolete, or you can adapt and become irreplaceable. Adaptation isn't surrender, it's strategy. And here's your playbook. Step 1. Audit your job. Sit down and brutally assess what you do every day. Break it into two categories: tasks that follow a pattern and tasks that require human judgment. If you're a commercial pilot, the pattern tasks are obvious: managing autopilot systems, following checklists, executing standard procedures. These are the tasks AI will dominate. Accept it. Don't waste energy fighting the inevitable. But now look at the judgment tasks, the moments when you had to make a call that wasn't in the manual, the time you diverted a flight because something felt wrong, even though all the instruments said you were fine, the time you calmed a panicking crew member, the time you chose compassion over protocol. Those moments? AI can't touch them. Not yet, maybe not ever. Your goal is to become indispensable in those judgment spaces. If 80% of your job is pattern-based and 20% is judgment-based, your mission is to flip that ratio, find ways to spend more time in the human-only zones. Step 2. Learn to use AI as a tool, not as a threat. Here's a harsh truth. The pilots who survive are the ones who become fluent in AI, not the ones who fear it. Right now, there's a certification called AI Flight Systems Specialist. It's being offered by Boeing, Airbus, and several aviation academies. It teaches pilots how autonomous systems think, how to interpret their decisions, and how to intervene effectively when needed. Airlines are starting to require it. The pilots who have it are getting promoted. The ones who don't are being quietly phased out. Learn to code, even basic Python or JavaScript. You don't need to become a software engineer, but you need to understand how algorithms make decisions. When you can read the logic behind an AI's choices, you stop being its victim and start being its supervisor. Use AI to your advantage. There are now AI tools that help pilots analyze their own performance, identify weaknesses, and optimize decision-making. Tools like Flight IQ and Pilot Sense AI are being used by elite aviators to sharpen their skills. They're not resisting the technology, they're weaponizing it for self-improvement. The future doesn't belong to pilots who fly better than AI. It belongs to pilots who fly with AI better than anyone else. Step 3. Build, create, own. This is where most people get stuck. They think adaptation means finding another job in aviation, but the real opportunity is in building something new. Look at Captain Emily Torres. After 15 years flying for Delta, she saw the writing on the wall. Instead of waiting to be reassigned, she launched Skybridge Academy, an online platform teaching former pilots how to transition into drone operations, urban air mobility, and AI oversight roles. In 2 years, she's trained over 4,000 pilots. Her revenue last year, $3.2 million. She didn't just adapt, she built an empire on the transformation. Or consider Marcus Chen, a former 777 captain who now runs Ethical AI Aviation, a consulting firm that advises airlines on how to implement autonomous systems without sacrificing human accountability. He charges $500 per hour, works remotely, and has more control over his life than he ever did in a cockpit. The pattern is clear. The people thriving in this transition aren't the ones clinging to the old model. They're the ones creating new models. Ask yourself, what can I build that AI can't? What knowledge do I have that's valuable in a world where planes fly themselves? It could be education, consulting, content creation, experience design, or something that doesn't exist yet. Your career isn't ending. It's becoming entrepreneurial. Step 4. Invest in what makes you irreplaceably human. This is the most important step, and the one most people ignore. AI will always be better at precision, but it will never be better at connection. So invest in the skills that make you human: empathy, storytelling, leadership, emotional intelligence, and creativity. Take public speaking courses. Learn to communicate complex ideas to non-technical audiences. Airlines need advocates, people who can explain to the public why AI in aviation is safe, who can handle media crises, who can represent the human side of an increasingly automated industry. Develop your emotional intelligence. The most valuable people in any organization are the ones who can navigate human dynamics, who can lead teams, resolve conflicts, and inspire trust. These are skills AI will never replicate. And here's a secret. The more automated the world becomes, the more people crave authentic human connection. Be the person who provides that. Be the captain who passengers remember. Be the instructor who changes lives. Be the voice that makes people feel safe when everything feels uncertain. Step 5. Reframe your identity. This is the hardest part. You're not just a pilot, you never were. You're a problem solver, a decision maker, a leader under pressure, a guardian of safety, a student of complex systems. Those skills translate far beyond aviation. Former military pilots are becoming CEOs, entrepreneurs, and crisis consultants. Commercial pilots are moving into logistics, operations management, and technology leadership. The skills you developed in the cockpit, situational awareness, risk assessment, teamwork, adaptability, are some of the most valuable skills in any industry. Stop defining yourself by the controls you touch. Start defining yourself by the impact you make. A final story. There's a former Air Force pilot named Rachel Kim who now works at SpaceX, managing mission operations for crewed space flights. She doesn't fly the spacecraft. AI handles that. But she designs the protocols, trains the astronauts, and makes critical decisions during missions. She told me, "I thought leaving aviation would feel like losing myself, but I didn't lose anything. I just found a bigger sky." That's what adaptation looks like. Not smaller, bigger. Here's your mantra. Audit, adapt, build, own. Audit your skills. Adapt to the technology. Build something new. Own your transformation. This isn't just survival, it's evolution. And evolution doesn't ask permission. It rewards the bold. Adaptation isn't just intelligence, it's survival written in human code. And you have the code. You always did. Now it's time to rewrite it. So here we are. The end of the flight. The moment where you have to decide, do you believe this is an ending or a beginning? Picture this. 100 years from now, a child looks up at the sky and watches a plane glide silently overhead. They ask their parent, "Who's flying that?" And the parent smiles and says, "Nobody. It flies itself." The child thinks for a moment, then asks, "Then who made it fly?" And that's the question that matters. Because even in a world of fully autonomous aviation, someone had to dream it, design it, trust it, and teach it. Someone had to write the code. Someone had to define what safe means. Someone had to decide that efficiency should never outweigh ethics. Someone had to ensure that when a machine makes a life or death decision, it's guided by human values. That someone is still human, and always will be. The profession of pilot, as we knew it, is transforming. That's undeniable. But transformation is not extinction. It's metamorphosis. The caterpillar doesn't die. It becomes something capable of flight in ways it never imagined. Here's what AI will never understand. Why a pilot chooses this life in the first place. It's not about the mechanics of lift and thrust. It's about the first time you felt a plane leave the ground and realized you were defying gravity itself. It's about the quiet pride of landing safely in a storm, knowing you brought 200 souls home. It's about the sunrise at 40,000 feet, when the world below is still dark and you're the only one who sees the light breaking over the horizon. That's not a job, that's a calling. And callings don't disappear, they evolve. The AI can fly the plane, but it will never know what it means to be trusted with someone's life. It will never feel the weight of that responsibility. It will never look into the eyes of a child stepping onto their first flight and promise, without words, that everything will be okay. That's where you come in. That's where humanity will always matter. The pilots who thrive in the next decade won't be the ones who resist the machines. They'll be the ones who remember why we wanted to fly in the first place, and who carry that spirit into every new role they take on, whether they're training AI systems, designing urban air mobility networks, teaching the next generation, or building entirely new industries. They'll carry the soul of aviation with them, because aviation was never just about technology. It was about courage, and courage adapts. Let me tell you about one last person, Captain David Park. He flew for 28 years. When his airline transitioned to fully autonomous regional flights, he was offered early retirement. He could have taken it. He was 56, financially secure, with nothing left to prove. Instead, he became a volunteer flight instructor for underprivileged youth in developing countries, places where aviation is still a dream, not a given. He teaches kids in rural Kenya and Guatemala how to build model planes, how to understand aerodynamics, how to believe they can touch the sky. He'll never fly commercially again, but he's inspiring the next generation of aviators, engineers, and dreamers. He told me, "AI took my job, but it gave me back my purpose." That's the choice we all face, not just pilots, everyone. In every industry, in every profession, the machines are coming. They're faster, cheaper, and often better. But they will never have purpose. They will never feel the joy of inspiring someone. They will never experience the satisfaction of helping another human being achieve their dreams. Those things are ours, forever. So here's the final question. What will you do with your irreplaceable humanity? Will you mourn what was, or will you build what's next? The sky is not closing. It's expanding. There are more opportunities now than ever before. They just don't look like they used to, and maybe that's the point. Maybe we spent so long looking at the cockpit that we forgot to look up at the stars. Space exploration, urban air mobility, drone ecosystems, AI ethics, education, advocacy, entrepreneurship. The next chapter of aviation isn't about flying planes. It's about imagining what flight can become. And imagination? That's the one thing machines will never do better than us. So, if you're a pilot watching this, feeling the weight of uncertainty, let me say this. You are not obsolete. You are not expendable. You are not being left behind. You are being invited to evolve, to lead, to create, to show the world that humanity doesn't end when the job description changes. It just begins again. Because here's the truth. AI will never compute. Humans don't exist to do jobs. Jobs exist to give humans purpose. And when one form of purpose fades, we don't disappear. We find another, or we create it. The story of aviation is the story of human ambition. We looked at the sky and decided it was ours. We built machines to take us there, and now those machines are learning to fly on their own. But they're flying because we taught them. They're safe because we made them that way. They're serving humanity because that's what we designed them to do. We are not passengers in this transformation. We are the pilots. We always were. So take the controls, not of the plane, of your destiny. Audit. Adapt. Build. Own. Audit your skills. Adapt to the change. Build something new. Own your evolution. Humanity isn't ending. It's just beginning again. And if you believe that, if you believe in human evolution over extinction, in transformation over surrender, in courage over fear, then subscribe. Join the conversation. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the future isn't written by machines. It's written by people brave enough to fly into the unknown. And you? You were born for this. Welcome to the next chapter of flight. The sky is waiting.